So a lot of people ask me, how did you get interested in learning about World War II and history? And so kind of probably the start for me was the first book. Well, I guess I should start with my step-grandfather was in World War II. And so I have this book, you can't really see it on the Zoom, that was published of a map, has a map and has pictures of everywhere his unit was. So it's kind of interesting. I brought that in case anybody wants to look at it. And there was a man from Plymouth he was in Company A, but there's a man from Plymouth in Company B that's listed in here. So that's kind of interesting. And so like I knew that, Grandpa was in the war, but I hadn't really, they didn't talk about that back then. And then I read this book, which is a great book for young, it's actually a kid's book. It's called Left for Dead by Pete Nelson. And this tells the story of a young boy who decided to do a History Day project on the USS Indianapolis. And his dad dropped him off at the college library and says, okay, I'll pick you up in a couple hours. And he came back and says, okay, what'd you find? Nothing. And the dad's, what do you mean you didn't find anything? Of course, there was nothing. And so this kid started writing to survivors and ended up having all this first source material. His project was disqualified because somebody told him he needed to put all that information in a binder, and he did. And they said, no, you can't have a binder. It has to all be on your board. So they disqualified him. But in the process, he actually was able to prove that the captain of the USS Indianapolis was not guilty, even though he was court-martialed and convicted, and was able to, they couldn't actually do a presidential pardon, but the president was able to put a note in his service file that says he was not guilty. And so that's the power of, a 11-year-old kid and what he did with his research. So that is a great book. And then the other one that I had read that I really liked was Shadow Divers by Robert Kurson. And that's about a couple guys that go out and they found a German U-boat off the coast of New Jersey that nobody knew was there. And so the process of identifying that boat and going back to Germany and meeting with the family members and saying, we found your loved one, we were very respectful, this is where they are. And that's very interesting. So then for those of you that know me, you know that in 2010, I got a Lilly grant to research the 1893 World's Fair. Well, we love to say that Lilly is the gift that keeps on giving, because then you're invited every summer to go down to Terre Haute to Indiana State for the teacher workshop. This year it's virtual, so next week I'll be painting at home. But one of the things that they did was a mini workshop. So you signed up for a big workshop and then you signed up for a 2-hour mini workshop. And one of the options that they usually offer is a trip to the Candles Holocaust Museum. And so the one year I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I read some books, and so I signed up to go. Meeting Eva Kor was an experience that will change your life. She was such a fascinating lady. She died 2 years ago on July 4th in Poland at Auschwitz. She was at the hotel. She'd been there the day before leading her tour group. So just a remarkable lady. And to meet her, she was happy and cheerful, and she spoke of forgiveness. She said, forgiveness is the seeds of peace. Anger is the seeds of war. And she ended up, when I met her, at that time, she was not as well known as she is now. I was there in 2013 the first time. And her husband, Mickey, who was also a Holocaust survivor, would play the piano for visitors, played totally by ear. And so she spoke, told her story. He spoke and told his story. And then, we got to look around the museum. And then I stopped 2 years ago before I came home, and it's amazing the change in the museum. So if you ever get a chance, if you're around Terre Haute, definitely take time to stop and go through the museum. It's wonderful. They have the hologram of her, which at Candles, it's a flat screen. And so you can ask it questions. They realize that these people are not going to be around. And so they have several different people they've recorded, and different museums have these. We went to visit the museum in Skokie, Illinois, and theirs you sit in a little auditorium, and there's a stage, and the person projects on the stage, and it looks like they're sitting there. And so these people went out, they spent days recording. They asked them every question they could think that anybody would possibly ask them. And I have a friend who, after I went and met her and came back, we're telling about her, and she actually ended up going on one of the trips to Auschwitz with Eva Kor. And she gave me a heads up that if you ask it the right questions, it will sing to you. And so you can ask her about like a song from her childhood, and she will sing a lullaby in Polish to you. And then if you ask her what her favorite song is, she'll sing The Impossible Dream. But you can ask all these any kind of question, and it will answer, the hologram will answer back to you. So that's really cool. So when I went the first time, she gave us, Lilly had paid for us all to get a copy of her book, Surviving the Angel of Death. And then she insisted on giving all of us, because we were teachers, she gave all of us her documentary, Forgiving Dr. Mengele, which tells the story of her deciding to forgive Dr. Mengele and the Nazis. And then I came across, at the library here in Plymouth, they have this book called Echoes from Auschwitz, that apparently she actually visited Plymouth in 1996, I think it was, which that was when I was off to college, so I missed that. But this was her first book she wrote about her experiences. So then a couple of years ago, WFYI did a documentary on her and her story of forgiveness. And they have the educational version, which Lilly bought all of the teachers the educational toolkit. So it has the discussion guide and the 1-hour screening edition for use in your classroom. And then right now they have that online for free on PBS, has that for people to watch. They're trying to get the story out there. So if you go to thestoryofeva.com, and then there's a spot to click, and it will take you to PBS Learning Media, where you can access the discussion guide, the documentary, all that is on their website, that they have I think with the pandemic, they just want it out there for people to use. So that's what we're going to watch today, is the 1-hour version, and learn about her story. So we're going to have